Happy Age of Disclosure Premiere Day. In Austin, Texas, the South by Southwest Festival had its premiere of Dan Farah's The Age of Disclosure. There were a number of people there that attended the premiere that are known within the UFO community. There's a picture that I used for the thumbnail here that only shows 5 of them. There's Jim Semivan, there's Colonel Carl Nell. Next to Carl Nell is the director, Dan Farah. There's Tim Gallaudet, there's Dr. Hal Puthoff, and then there's Dr. Gary Nolan. But at the premiere, there were a number of people, even those who are not that known in the community, who attended. There was Jay Stratton, who was head of the UAP task force. There was Commander David Fravor. There was Nick Gold from NASA, who also worked with Mr. Robert Bigelow. There was Ryan Graves. There was Representative Tim Burchett. There was Dr. Eric Davis amongst the crowd, and a number of other people from the military and the intelligence community that are not public. I am going to try and get 2 of those people that are not very well known. One of them is, and the other one is not even known. I'm trying. I hope I can make it happen. But before the movie was shown, there was this introduction, courtesy of Mr. Kent Bai on X. Just like 2 minutes or so. This is what Mr. Dan Farah said right before the movie was presented. Here it is.
Let's talk about this movie. I've been talking about this movie for a while. To say that this film is provocative is a little bit of an understatement. It's one of these films that is going to get discussed endlessly, and that's certainly been how it is in our office. We talk about it pretty much every single day, and I have been dying for more people to see it so I could talk about it with all of you. You've made a wonderful choice to be in this theater today. It's an incredible subject. I think some of us think we might know things about it, and some people think that they don't believe things about it, but this film is probably going to make you feel a new some kind of way. It's absolutely fascinating, it's troubling, it's a stark reminder that we got to keep watching these skies and maybe some other places too. And it's just a thrill to present this film. Please help me welcome Dan Farah, the director of Age of Disclosure.
Thank you for making this happen in South by. I made this film in secrecy the last 2.5 years, which will make a lot more sense once you see it. You'll understand why. So as a result, you guys are the very first audience in the world to see this film, and cannot wait to hear what you think and for it to start some much needed conversations around this topic.
Yeah, and then after the movie, they did a Q&A session with the moderator, who was a lady. She presented everybody. They started coming to the stage.
But now that it's been shown for the first time, what do you feel like is the most surprising realization for you?
For me, I would say, despite the fact that this is clearly a very serious situation and there's tremendously high stakes, and leadership from both sides of our government, both political parties, are clearly on board, taking it seriously. Despite all that, the public is largely very unaware and totally in the dark. And so my hope is that this film changes that, or at least starts the process of changing that. And yeah, that's the most surprising thing for me, when you meet very aware people who follow the news and are well read, and they're clueless to all of this. So I'd like to hope that the film will change that.
I think it will also, it just did such good disinformation. I want to see like part 2, 3, 4 as things start to get disclosed. Jay, thank you for being here and for making so much history behind the scenes and everything. I know you helped so much in the process of making this documentary. Can you say a little bit about how it feels seeing, a plan that you really pushed into motion and all the hard work finally come to light in the public way?
Sure, on the big screen here at South by Southwest. Wow. and this is just for humanity. And thanks, Dan. So, very important message, and I'm so proud to be a part of this and bringing this to you and really kind of turn it around on you, right? It's in your hands. Lots of time over the years, countless hours with Congress, with the executive branch, pushing this message forward. And what I want to say is, in those countless hours, I have given them information. I've given them not only the existence of non-human intelligence, but the address to go look to see it. And they were denied access. So, with your help, and your help, let's keep it going.
Commander Fravor, you are, I think, the only Navy fighter pilot that I know about who seemed super chill and calm, like chasing a UFO. When you were chasing them, being that calm, is the thing that makes you feel like the most worried about this topic?
Well, I will say, it's 20 years ago. We didn't have the technology then. We don't have it now. We're not going to have it 10 to 20 years from now. So that's disheartening right now. What's the worst fear is that if an adversary gets it, North Korea, China, Russia before us, because it is so game-changing and it'll basically take everything that we have today and make it obsolete.
Terrifying. We're not ready. Congressman Burchett. Burchett? All right, thank you. Thank you for correcting me. Obviously, yes. Oh yes, we're so happy that you're here. Clearly, this topic, like we've said, is a bipartisan one. Do you feel like that should help us to feel maybe a little bit optimistic about what you and your colleagues in Congress can do and that you might be successful?
Sure, but I don't trust anybody, so.
Very Texas.
I'm the reason we have the committee, the hearing in the House. I raised hell, and I was told I was going to be chairman of it. I think 18 hours before, then all of a sudden I wasn't chairman. You never see me sitting in the chairman's thing, so there's a lot of things that work in all this, and it has nothing to do with party loyalty or anything like that. It's greed, power, it's corruption, it's everything that runs from Washington, D.C. And I am one of those crazy Christians in the world. I mean, I'm a fundamentalist. I believe Jesus died on the cross for my sins, and I don't hate anybody that doesn't. But wait a minute, I'm not going to have an offering or altar. But I just, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it one more time. Every night I go out and I take my dogs out to go to the bathroom. They go at 2 o'clock in the morning. They won't go like everybody else. And I look at those stars and I think, wow, the light from those stars left there before the time of Christ. And the vastness of God's great universe. It's more than I can comprehend. And I just, I don't fear them. I think it's just another one of God's creations. And I go to my deathbed thinking that. And I thank you for making this wonderful film, brother. Do not trust Washington. As we say in East Tennessee, it is crooked as a dog's leg. And the polling show that more than half the people in this country think we're not alone. And guess what? Oh, NASA wants to study it. CIA wants to study it. You know what that means? More of your money. They already got it. Tell them to turn it loose. Tell them to turn it loose.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited. For Brett Fetterson, I'm going to have to read this. You were the head of aviation security on the White House National Security Council, and you represented the Federal Aviation Administration on the government's UAP task force. Do you feel like we are currently underestimating the safety of the flight issues that are talked about in this, and like what is actually going to, the issues for the nation's air safety around this topic?
Yeah, absolutely we are. I think history shows we underestimate quite a few things until they really kind of creep up on us, like 9/11. and then we're realizing, oh, we've missed all the signs all along. And so thanks to Dan for starting the conversation. I think, December with the drone incidents we had in New Jersey, all across the country in the last couple of years, and the fact that we've been trying, and Jay was big to pilot this, trying to get commercial pilots to acknowledge that they're seeing stuff and then report it back to the federal government. We've got a long way to go. We're still having problems with just identifying drones, but UAP should absolutely be part of that. DHS came out a long time ago with see something, say something. So if there's anything else I can say about underestimating it, it's in your hands. So if you see something or you know somebody that has it, don't be afraid. It's hard to identify things, but let the professionals take it, but make sure you pass it along. And we definitely need to have the government be more transparent in that ability.
Yeah, one of the things when I watched this, the idea that they don't use radar anymore was like, wait, what? Like, so many things in this film. For Lieutenant Ryan Graves, you've made it a personal mission to really publicize the air safety concerns that were presented. Can you talk about what you think needs to happen to actually make progress in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working on this issue both with commercial pilots and military pilots since I got out. I learned in 2017 when the New York Times article came out that we saw mentioned here. I saw that as a cry for help, that there weren't the proper procedures and line of access to be able to resolve this issue. And I took it upon myself to provide a resource for pilots and others to report to. And what's very clear to me is that this is an ongoing issue for them. They have to deal with this in the course of their professional duties, and they don't have the proper tools or mitigation processes in place in order to deal with this. And so they're left out there on the front lines dealing with something that can be quite disturbing and quite powerful to people. And they essentially have to keep it to themselves without being able to share that or pass it to someone that can help resolve it. And that's what I'm working on. We need to have standardized reporting across the United States, both for military and commercial pilots as well as civilians. We need to have the proper resources behind that reporting system to be able to investigate, run down, and potentially advance the conversation about what we're seeing in the skies and provide those safety reports to pilots so that they can accommodate them and be prepared for them when they first see them. And I think this film that Dan put together is going to have a great impetus on removing the stigma that prevents a lot of those pilots from reporting as well.
Yes, we're so glad that you're here. Okay, as a chief scientist at ATIP, I know you know better than anybody the breakthrough technology could be used for good or bad. And when we talked about the energy source of UAP and how it could be clean energy, but also weapons of mass destruction, you said that you would put your vote for making a humanitarian issue and opening it up to the world. Do you think that humanity can handle that responsibility?
I think so. I think, behind the scenes, when each of us are asked to be part of, say, a podcast or something, we all sort of shrank from it because it's, there'd just be too much chatter about what we did. The brilliance of what Dan Farah did was to quietly go behind the scenes, talk to 34 people, and say, okay, if you all come out at the same time, then you won't have that stigma associated. And so that made a great step forward. So given this kind of general introduction to the topic, I think that for the scientists in the crowd, like Eric and me and so on, it opens up the opportunity that we can get more scientific collaboration. And so, part of, what I've done recently is, go before NSF and Senator Rounds and so on, and talk about opening up exploration and scientific investigation to try to come ahead. But we needed to have a more open tapestry, in the public. And so that's what I think Dan Farah did for us. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Nolan, can you speak a little bit about one of the things I had never heard anything about was the biological effects that have been seen from people who've interacted with the crafts and how it's made these biological changes on human beings. what are you hoping that comes out of the public being more aware about that piece of information?
Well, I think the first part of it is that, our servicemen and women and intelligence community operatives are being put in harm's way often at, even though they don't even know what's being done to them. And that offends me deeply as a scientist and somebody who works in medicine regularly. I mean, it was basically how I got brought into this, was being shown the kind of data that had people who clearly were harmed. You just can't argue with it. And what was fascinating was, and this sort of gets back to the theme of stigma, when I approached some of my dearest colleagues at Stanford saying, hey, here's this data, I've been allowed to share it with you, and they asked, well, how happened? I said, well, it was UFOs. Oh my God, it's like, I'm sorry, I have something to do. But what was fascinating, though, and I think that this film is really going to help that, is this put together a consistent story told both with emotion and facts. And the facts aren't just these events happen, but here are the conclusions that we have actually dared to come to about what they are. And that's going to help me trying to convince my colleagues, both at Stanford and through, say, the Soul Foundation, the other things that we're doing, to feel more comfortable to come forward themselves. So this has done a great service, I think, Dan, what you've done here, not just to the community at large, but to the academics that I try to serve.
Okay, for Michael, can you talk a little bit about that stigma and around everything UAP and how that's created such a big hurdle for our country most specifically, and why it's important that this is the moment to address that?
Sure. When I was on NASA's UAP independent study team, we had a number of academics. And just for participating in the UAP independent study team, these academics had their careers threatened. Not even for saying that UAP was real, but just for having the temerity of even looking at the topic. How can you conduct science under those conditions, where there's such bias and such prejudice? And that's why we need the power of film. What Dan has done, and the heroes of this stage have enabled, is create a documentary, the power of film is South by Southwest, we're putting it forward to push back on that stigma, to acknowledge the reality. We look at the power of an inconvenient truth, of what that documentary did. Well, here's a really inconvenient truth. And thanks to Dan, we're pushing back. But let this film be a call to action. As Jay was saying, let this be a catalyst now for all of you to call your members of Congress, demand transparency, demand accountability, and demand the truth on UAP.
Tim Gallaudet, we've spoken a lot about, obviously, everyone was very aware of the UAP activity in the skies, but as the Navy Rear Admiral and the former Chief Oceanographer, which is the coolest job of all time, I think your expertise is more focused on the seas, and part of your testifying before Congress was about that. Can you talk a little bit about what you think should happen next with regards to that, and if you think what is happening down there is as shocking as what's happening up here and we just don't know yet?
Well, exactly. We have observed UAP in the oceans, but the oceans, as I said, are so unexplored. If we only amp up the amount of research we're doing in the oceans, we're bound to learn more about UAP. And actually, that is what I'm making a call for right now, is that we have a large American ocean science enterprise with many ships that universities own as well as research institutions, and they operate drones and satellites to study the ocean. I think that whole enterprise needs to get around and take seriously researching UAP, in addition to others like the space science enterprise. I think our whole American scientific enterprise needs to get behind this and take it seriously. And the one thing I've called for is I've engaged the new White House science advisor, a friend of mine, and I've asked him to put UAP research as one of the top items in the annual White House R&D priorities memo. And something the White House does every year, and when they do that, every agency has to follow it. And that's how we're going to get agencies like mine, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, as well as NASA and the DoD, to without a whole of government research approach to UAP. Now, let me just say, Dan, thank you for this, and thank you for keeping that comment in about the Super Walmart.
Representative Tim Burchett expressed how he is a religious fundamentalist, but he's also open to the idea that extraterrestrials exist and that we're not alone in the universe. And he gave it his own personal religious opinion on the matter. But that doesn't deter him from trying to support transparency, which is what matters really. When he was saying that, there were people like Dr. Gary Nolan or Nick Gold who were like nodding, because that's the type of attitude that I think we need. Even though there are people who are really, really scientific and don't necessarily believe in religion, they still understand that they need to cooperate with people like Tim Burchett, who is, as he said, a religious fundamentalist. And then the fact that Dan Farah went in private and spoke to 34 people from the government and from politics in America and from the intelligence community, I think, and it wasn't known. It was like completely secret. There was a little bit of buzz, but nothing went too crazy. No details were given. And I think that's partly work of Dan Farah. People who are like completely into UFOs may think that there was nothing new said in this documentary, but the names of the people that were part of this event, they do have even more corroboration of things to say. And I think that there needs to be like a combination between documentaries like these and people who are actually going out in the public and doing their own science or doing their own experiments with the phenomenon. This is something that Dr. Gary Nolan has encouraged constantly. This is something that, for example, the Skywatcher team is encouraging. Although I don't feel comfortable with the fact that some technocrats and oligarchs are taking over the subject, I still don't know if they really have good or bad intentions. I do know they probably want to make money, but if them making money is at the same time helping humanity, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just one of those people who happens to think that if we're trying to get rid of the materialistic paradigm, this attitude of trying to profit from technology, I don't think that's a great idea. I don't think that's the way to go. And the transition that is happening right now between government secrecy to the technocrats of these secrets, I'm not sure I am 100% on board with that. It's a tough one, but it was confirmed by many different types of reviews that the main idea here is that there is some sort of arms race taking place between the biggest superpowers in the world, namely the US, China, and Russia. And this movie happened in order to make people aware that this is actually going on behind the scenes. This alleged arms race, which is, if you think about it, because they want to frame it as even worse than the atomic bomb, we don't really know if that's the case, but if there's some sort of energy that is just as disruptive scientifically and to reality as the atomic bomb was back in 1945, there's no telling what could happen if this is known to the public, like catastrophically, as people have been warning. And, well, I just have no idea. So we won't know until we get there, I guess. People can say whatever they want. They can complain whatever they want. These people from the government can speculate on what could happen. But truth of the matter is, nothing has happened. We need to get there. We need to get to the stuff, to the bodies, to the new science, to the materials personally, and then make the assessment. If they have already done that, they're not telling the public. Why is that? You know, I know that Dr. Gary Nolan is going through injuries of people who have suffered some sort of radiation from these And not a lot of the information that he comes across in his investigation is known to the public. So I guess that taking the best steps means that probably people who are involved in this should start to be a little bit more transparent and sharing what they found more openly and prominently. Hopefully, this documentary does that a little bit. I haven't seen it myself. The reviews are a little mixed. Variety was the one that made arguably the most negative review of them all. It's not negative as in he said something bad about it. He said that the documentary was very well made and that the people in it, namely the people from the government, are convincing. But the truth of the matter is that over nearly 80 years, there hasn't been a lot of actual, like, palpable physical evidence to corroborate anything. All the video that we got that is sanctioned by the government is not that good. And we need something better than that. If it's not video, because right now the AI revolution is kind of messing that up, it could be just physical evidence like the Nazca mummies, for example. And I just want to point out the little irony that we're getting some physical evidence in terms of these Nazca mummies, and there's a bunch of people that talk about having spheres in their possession that are like either made of stone or some other material. That is physical evidence, but these people are not even talking about that a lot. I think that one of the reasons that may be is because there is still no like direct route that tells us that the Nazca mummies came from either another planet or something else, or that these spheres are from a material that is not made here. Just to give you an example, with the mummies, for example, yes, there are bodies. Yes, they have tridactyl features, especially the bigger ones. Those are really compelling, but they're still defining and talking about where these bodies come from and what their DNA tells the people. I've had a few interviews with people that talk about this DNA potentially coming from places in Asia and another type of DNA that is not known. But that's as far as we go in the scientific process that we are in right now. We can't yet say these came from a place, or, it's difficult. The evidence shows that at least part of them are from here, not necessarily from another place. So we're still looking into that, but that is physical evidence. And with this, you got people from the government who are respected, yeah, but it's kind of hard to just say, yeah, what they're saying is true, because what they're saying needs to be shown, not told. Hopefully this documentary does a push to get that. I think that if people keep saying that it is compelling, more people are going to pay attention. The Hollywood Reporter also has like a really, really blunt title. The IndieWire review was way more positive than the other two. So I'm going to leave every review that I can find in the description.